Hi everyone, my name is Erica Edwards and I will share with you my thoughts on the significance of race and ethnicity in schools. European American Education, the Master Plan. The Founding Fathers established a school with the goal of educating students to be useful and productive citizens. They believed that a universal education policy should be in place where all students will be taught the same uniform curriculum. So that means they're going to be taught the same academics, history, reading, writing, and societal principles. And in doing so, everyone will be educated. And all of these students who were European students who were coming from diverse backgrounds would have the same education, and everyone would be able to conform to societal principles. And in doing so, they would run this educational system like a business, and everyone who graduates, all of the students would be able to further the economic system and the military. The founding fathers felt that the universal curriculum would work out for all of their intended purposes. Their students would be able to train for the workforce, and they would be able to have the societal principles, and they would be able to meet societal goals. And in doing so, they would not have to spend so much money on building prisons. They would not have to put any money into the welfare assistance programs because the children would be trained to go out and get jobs and to be able to secure housing. They would not have to compete with each other because everybody would learn the same information. And in doing so, teaching them using this universal curriculum, they would also be learning societal norms and these values, and they'll be able to learn how to conform. So that was the ultimate goal of this European American educational plan, and it was going to allow that European students from diverse backgrounds, no matter if they had religious differences or socioeconomic differences, they would still be allowed to come to this school because the founding fathers' ultimate goal was to build a community where everyone could work together, and it would be an inclusive community, a respectful community, a collaborative community, a harmonious community, but it would only be for Europeans. But now we have a new student population. So as time has progressed, you have other races of people who are saying, I want to go to school too. So you have the Black and the African American children, and they are saying, I want to go to school, but people are saying, no, you're just a laborer. You shouldn't be in school. You need to be working somewhere. And then you have the Asian Americans, and who they thought of them as perpetual foreigner, the yellow perils, the opioid addicts, the hypersexualized women, and they said no, can't come. The Latin community is inhumanely characterized as animal, criminals, drug dealers, rapists, and murderers. And then you have the Native American people. They said, no, we don't want you to come to school with us. You need to be in your own schools where you can learn to kill, so we can kill the Indian out of you. That means that we're not going to technically kill you, but we want to strip you of your language, your traditions, and your culture because we want to save you. And then the Native Americans, they said that, you guys are primitive, you are childlike, you're cannibalistic, and you just don't need to be in school with us because we are the superior race, and we do not want your people contaminating our race. So we want to make sure that we are staying separate. But you can still go to school. But what happens when you have these segregated schools? Remember, you're going to not have the same resources that are going to be in certain areas, and it's going to mostly be based on the economic system within that area. So most of these segregated schools for these people of color were going to be taking place in dilapidated wooden shacks. They didn't have a cafeteria, no gym, nurse's office, or teacher's restroom. So just imagine that now. Overcrowded classrooms, class in old school buses and tar paper shacks, out-of-date textbooks, inadequate curriculums, no basic school supplies. So the teachers had to do what they needed to do in order for the children to be able to be educated. But it was unfair because they deserved an education as well. So what is the significance of race in schools? The Annie E. Casey Foundation says the consequence of failing to ensure educational success are far-reaching. The adverse impact is long-term and reflected in future employment prospects, poverty and incarceration rates. Because of race and class segregation is in relationship to local school revenues, students in high poverty, racially segregated schools are not exposed to high quality curricula, high qualified teachers, or important social networks as often as students in wealthier, predominantly white schools. So a lot of the parents and a lot of the teachers and a lot of the teachers in the community, parents and the students began to talk, and they said, no, I don't want to continue to go to the segregated school. So they began to go to court, and they began to say, I want to have a better education. I want to go to the school that is closer to my house, that is nicer to my house, and I don't have to walk so far to get there. And so in 1849, Roberts versus the city of Boston, the 5-year-old Sarah Roberts' parents went to court and they sued the Boston Public School District after Sarah was denied enrollment in school because she was only just a short distance from the white school. But the Supreme Court found segregated schools to be constitutional at the time. So she had to continue to go to the black school that was underserved. And then in 1927, Gang Loom versus Rice, the Supreme Court ruled that Gang Loom, a Chinese student classified as colored, could not attend a white school in Mississippi because at one time the Chinese were able to be considered they were looking at them and they decided, okay, you cannot come to our school. You're not white. I'm going to label you as colored. So in 1927, he sued, but then he had to go back to the black school. And in 1947, Westminster School District versus Mendez, the Federal Appeals Court enforces Westminster Public School to all Mexican American students enrollment to open their school to all students enrollment in white schools. So not only did the Mexican Americans get to go, but you had the Native Americans, you had the Asian Americans, and all of them were able to get into the white schools in California. So by 1947, you have it in California where the doors are starting to open up and the schools are starting to be integrated in California. In 1954, in the South, Brown versus Board of Education took place, and they overturned Plessy versus Ferguson that says separate but equal ruling schools. And then at this time, schools must enroll all citizens of every race and color. So everyone was excited because the segregated kids and the students in the segregated schools said, we're going to be able to go to the white schools where they have better books, they have better resources, they have a better building, they have gyms, and they have qualified teachers. So by 1968, Green versus County School Board of New Kent County says that the schools must comply. They must be able to show that they have facilities, they have a staff, they have a faculty, activities, and transportation that are designed in order for them to serve a desegregated population. So it was a long road to equability, but you had a lot of people who were stepping up and saying, I'm going to fight for my children to be able to go to school. So where are we now? So although we've come a long way in our plight for equal and equitable education for all of our students, there's still a lot of disparities in our educational system for our BIPOC students. So the first one, racial inequity in the curriculum. We know that a lot of times our students will come to school and the question that is going through their mind is, who will tell my story? I don't see myself in none of these books that I'm reading. I don't see myself in history books. So who is going to be able to tell my story so that I can feel connected to my education? The second one, we have a lot of students of color who are performing lower on these state assessments. If you look at the national data for these math and reading tests, you'll be able to see that the discrepancy between the different races. And then a lot of times our students will say, why was that test so hard? I didn't understand anything that was on that test. And then we have a higher dropout rate for our students. And they'll say, why am I even in school? I don't understand this information. None of this relates to me. I'm just going to drop out and I'm going to go to work. And then we have disproportionate amount of suspensions and expulsions. And the students are saying, I didn't do anything wrong. I just did this. but we know that people see things differently because of biases that we sometimes have. Then we have lower representation in the gifted and talented courses, but higher representation in special education classes. And a lot of times our students get stuck in those classes and they can't even come out, and then they begin to give up. And then you have when it goes back to that higher dropout rate, and then it goes back to that lower performance on state assessments. And then we have lower enrollment in higher education. And they're saying, will I get into college without affirmative action now? So am I going to be able to make my family proud by being the first one to go to school, or to be able to be successful in society because I want to go to college and I want to be able to get a job and to be able to take care of my family? But we have all these disparities that are taking place in education now. So let's look at some data. So I'm pulling up my school district. So this is Colleton County School District, and this is their national report card. So if you look at this data, you'll be able to see that our Black students here, they are scoring at 48, right? So 48% right here. And you're going to have it, whereas our white students are scoring at 75%. And then we have our Hispanic who are at 54%, and two or more races is 59, students with disabilities 20, and our English language learners are 33. So what is their percent below the national average? So the white children are only 25% below, the Black students are 52% below, Hispanic 46, two or more races is 41%. And then you have the students with disabilities. These are our special needs students, and this is going to be 80%. And our English language learners are at 67%. So we're able to see the discrepancies between these races. And so what are we going to do? That is the question we have to ask. And then if we go on to the math, so that was the reading. So we're looking at the math assessments. We have it where the white students are at 71%. At passing, and then we have them only being below at 29%. And then we have our Black students who are 35% passing and 65% are below. And then we have our Hispanic at 51, only 49 are below, and then 61% of our two or more races and only 39% are below. Students with disabilities, 17%, and then our English language learners are at 25%. So we can see here that with our math, our higher achievement is going to be with our white students, and then it goes, and then we have our Hispanic students, and then we have our two or more races first, and then we have our Black students. And you're able to see that our students are getting further and further behind the different races. Okay, so what does it look like? What are some more disparities in South Carolina? I'm still focusing on Colleton County School District, my local school. So if you're looking here, so not only are our children of color struggling with academics, they are also going to be our Hispanic students who are only just going to be a part of there's about 5% of them in this community, but they're suspended. 3% of them are suspended, or 3% are expelled. Only 3% of them are in GT classes, and none of them are in the AP courses. So this is going to be our Hispanic community. And then for our white students, 40% of them get expelled, 30% of them get in out of school suspension or get suspended for some type of infraction. And then, but they are in 60% of our gifted and talented classes, and they are in 36% of our AP courses. So these AP courses are going to be in high school, but when they're in middle school and elementary school, you will see them in those classes, in the gifted and talented classes. But let's look over here at our Black students. So 64% of them are going to be suspended. So you have 64% compared to 30% of our white students and to only 3% of our Hispanic students. And then as far as being expelled, you have 40% of our white students compared to 57% of our Black students. And then we said in the beginning that our white students, 60% of them are going to be in the gifted and talented classes within elementary and middle school, And only 30% of our Black students are going to be gifted and talented in middle school and elementary school. When they get to high school, you will see how a lot of our Black students are going to be able to get into those AP courses, and there'll be 64% of them in those AP courses in our local high school, and only 36% of our white students will be in those AP courses. So we'll be able to see that yes, our students are getting, our Black minority students are getting, our marginalized, underserved students are getting expelled and out of school, put out of school more than our white students and our Hispanic students. But you'll be able to see that when they get to the high school, they begin to take more and more AP classes. So we continue to ask ourselves, what does race really have to do with this in education? Why does race have to play a part in the way that students perform in school? And then we begin to see that over here, that when we're thinking about race, a lot of times we begin to see that people, and we begin to think of people based on their color, the color of their skin, and we will begin to think that they're linked with significant differences in mental capacity, that these innate hierarchy differences are measurable by cultural achievement of such populations. So that was from Montague. So we begin to think to ourselves, based on the fact that this person is this race, that maybe they don't have the mental capacity to be successful in school. And then you also have that some social constructs and cultural representations, they say based on the color of your skin and your facial features, that we're going to keep you out of certain classes because we just don't think that you can do it. We haven't tested you, we haven't done anything, we haven't observed you, but we're just going to say, no, you don't need to be a part. Because I want you to understand that racism is a visceral experience, that it dislodges brains, blocks airways, rips muscles, extracts organs, cracks bones, and breaks teeth. So even if it doesn't physically do it to our students, then it's going to do something to their minds. It is going to stop them from being successful in the future if we are not providing them an equitable education. So the theory application, the one that I chose based on all the reading that we had a chance to do, and I chose the Latino critical race theory. And I chose this particular theory because these are the four tenets that I was able to really understand and be able to find information that related to this, and to be able to change my mindset about the way my biases that I had for the Latinx community. So tenet number one, the production of knowledge. So this is going to be the formulation and generation of ideas and knowledge that focus a lens on issues that pertain to the Latinos and the law. So we have a law that's in place now. It's 8 U.S. Code 1325 that says improper entry by alien. First offense, if you sneak into the United States and you are caught, then you, on your first offense, you'll be fined under Title 18 and sentenced to no more than 6 months, and then you'll be sent back to your country. Second offense, you'll be fined under Title 18 and sentenced to no more than 2 years. So these are laws that we need to make sure that our Latin community understands, and also be able to work with them to improve these laws. So that is going to go into tenet number two, the advancement of social transformation. So this is going to be the practicability of ideas and knowledge set forth a path of improvement and transformations for the Latinos and other marginalized groups in society as a whole. So what are some improvement laws? We know that when Obama was in office, he came up with the DACA policy, and this is going to be for illegal immigrants who are to remain in the U.S. to attend school and work for at least 2 years. And they had to be at least 16 years old, and then after the 2 years, they could reapply. Because we know that a lot of our students who are in America, our Latino students, they would sometimes not know that they were not documented until they went out to get a job, or they wanted to get a driver's license, and that's when their parents would say, no, we've never made you gotten all the paperwork so you could be a citizen. We came over here illegally and we've been here all this time. And we know that with schools, they won't say anything, and they can't report the students for being in school if they're illegal immigrants. And so they also have the bilingual education law because it's so important that we're using our students' primary language in order for us to teach them English and to be able to use their foundational language skills. So that's the bilingual education law as well. For Tenet 3, we have the expansion and connection of anti-subordination, which is going to be the Latinx community is diverse, both domestically and globally, interconnected to others, which means that this is going to be when the people from Cuba, Mexico, and Puerto Rico and South or Central America would all come together, and they're going to fight for rights along with other marginalized people as well, for equitable laws, inclusive educational system, and rights to satisfactory housing and employment, and hopefully to be able to come to the United States and to get away from all those different things that are taking place in their country that is keeping them impoverished or that is a threat to their lives. Tenet number 4, cultivation of community and coalition. We have our scholars, our activists, and educators working to change the dominant culture's narrative of the Latinx communities. And this is when it's very important for us as teachers to be able to get into the Latin communities and to be able to mitigate those stereotypes and biases, perceptions, and behaviors, and to be able to say, I know my students, I visited them outside this community, outside the school, and I know that this is not true about them, what I've been hearing about in society. And also to be able to work closely with the Latin teachers to understand and to be able to get best practices from them and to be able to connect with our students better. And ultimately to be able to allow our Latinx students to use counter storytelling to be able to tell their culture's true history and increase cultural identity. And in doing so, we'll be exposing all of our students to their story and their true history, authentic history, and then and the Latinx community will feel better about themselves. Their sense of identity, racial identity will increase, and they will have a positive racial identity. The hardships and disparities in the Latinx community, they are great. So we have it whereas they have a scarce access to health care, 1 in 4 without health insurance. So just think about the fact that a lot of them are undocumented, so that means they can't get health insurance, or they may be working menial jobs and they're unable to secure health care. And so a lot of them are going to be sick, and then they start missing days in school, and then it could turn into something worse from there. But then we think about incarceration. So go back to when I was saying, if you do not have an adequate education, then what could happen? So when you're thinking about incarceration in the Latinx community, is 19% of the people who are incarcerated. They have a 50% of them are going to have drug cases. Well, they have drug cases according to this information, and they are 4 times likely to get arrested than whites for marijuana arrest. Latin men will have 1 in 6 chances of incarceration in their lifetime. So it's 1 in 6 chances that they will be incarcerated. The Latin women, 1 in 45 chances of being incarcerated. But look at the difference in the numbers with the whites. The white man is going to have 1 in 17 chance of being incarcerated, and the white woman will only have 1 in 111 chances of incarceration. So you see the big difference between the numbers between the men and the women. So you'll be able to see that there is a discrepancy in our society, and it seems as if it's saying that society believes in the stigma that of the Latinx community of what the things they've said about the Latinx community. So let's reflect on this. So what can I do as an educator, and what can we do as educators? So who am I in this? I am Black. I am African American. I'm a female. I'm cisgender. I speak English, Southern English, and I'm able-bodied. I'm married. I have 3 daughters and 3 furry friends. I am a Democrat. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I am middle class, but ultimately I am a teacher. And because I am a teacher, I think, and I have 3 daughters, I think it is so important and so critical that I am engaging in this and learning more and more about race and how it impacts our students. And I would love for my students and as well as my coworkers to be able to read this particular book that we read. And it's my top reasons for reading Solito. So we got a chance to read a lot of books, but this was one of my favorite books because immigration is the conversation that all of us are having right now. And so this particular book was very important to me, and it was very enlightening for me because it was authentic. It was a vivid and suspenseful description of the lengths that our immigrants will go, that our immigrant students and their families will go to in order for them to have a better life. And so we begin to think to ourselves that America needs to build this wall. But as you're reading this particular book, it will begin to give you more insight into why they want to come to America. What are some things that are happening over there? And why is it so difficult for them to have a better life? And why it's so difficult for them to have access into America? And then you will also be able to tell as teachers and to be able to understand through Solito's story that a lot of our students want to excel in students. A lot of our Latinx students want to excel in school, in class, but they have linguistic barriers, or they lack the foundational skills because a lot of those students were in poverty at their homes. They had inadequate schools, or many of them were just going through numerous trips trying to get into America. So that put a stop to school. And then Solito's family, they began to allow us to see how important family is to them. So we began to realize that the parents love their children and they're there to take care of their children. The entire community comes together to make sure that the children are safe and they are well taken care of. And another thing that I really did enjoy about this story is that it talked about how colorism is in every community. So not just in the Black community where we're saying, oh, light skin, dark skin, and we associate, and there are different privileges that come with that, if I could say privileges. So it's going to be the same thing that happens in the Latinx community. There are going to be instances of colorism and how it negatively impacts their community as well. So Solito is a very important book, and I'm going to talk to my principal about sharing this book with my coworkers so we can understand the plight of the immigrants. So a few of my aha moments that really resonated with me as I was reading and going through the text and all the literature and the conversations that we had in our weekly book clubs. I first have concluded that it's so important for us to remember that our students are going through a lot when they come to school. So we have our elementary, middle, and high school students, and a lot of them are trying to find themselves and they're trying to fit in. But at this time, they're starting to question race. Who are they in the scheme of things within the dominant society, within our school? And then we have to realize that as they're playing those video games at home and they're even at school playing video games on their phones, they're being characterized, our BIPOC students are being characterized as gang members, drug dealers, or our girls are being hypersexualized in these games. And so what is that really doing to them? What is that really saying to them? And how is that changing their behavior, their mindset, their academic resilience and abilities when they're being faced with, bombarded with that type of intrusive racism every day? And then our schools, they're underrepresented in AP courses and overrepresented in special education classes and sports programs. But it's not, what is it really saying to them when you have them all, just one or two students in these AP courses, but 20 Black BIPOC students in our special education classes? What is it really saying? And then I also began to realize how important it is for us to be able to provide our students student efficacy training for our BIPOC students. We have a lot of students who are in a predominantly white school, or you may have some students who are having some behavior challenges, some are BIPOC students who are having behavior problems or challenges, or just having issues with adjusting to being in school. So it's very important that we establish these student efficacy training organizations where our students can come in and they can discuss academic resilience. They can discuss racial solidarity and the threats that counter their racial identity. And those conversations will be able to build their self-esteem, build their racial identity and they're feeling positive about themselves. And you will be able to see, and I believe that we'll be able to see a difference in their behavior and academics as well. And I also began to realize that white women do not want to appear mean, so they lace their violence and niceness that inflicts emotional, mental, physical, and financial harm on the receiver. And when this happens, and I say, oh, I don't like that. I think you were being mean to me. Or if I say something about the incident, then I am oftentimes victim blamed. They start to cry or they begin to gaslight me. And then I would have to say, okay, silence. Don't say anything. But then I was glad to read this particular book because it began to allow me to see that we have to make sure that we stand up and against racism and be able to call people's hands on it. And BIPOC children born in America often struggle with cultural conflicts because a lot of times they are coming from another country or their parents are from another country and they're trying to figure out how to assimilate in the United States. Do I give up everything? Do I withdraw? Do I become bicultural? Do I become marginalized? What is it? And so there's a conflict. And so we have our students who come in our classrooms every day and we're saying, what's wrong? But could it be that our BIPOC students are struggling with their cultural differences? And then also it says that a lot of our BIPOC students their belief is that white means hope. So if they believe that white means hope, then what does it say about themselves, their race? Then because Alexi says these kids were magnificent when he went to the white school. They knew everything. They were beautiful. They were beautiful and smart. They were beautiful and smart and epic. They were filled with hope. So the white kids are considered to be beautiful. If they're considered to be smart and they're considered to be epic, then what are our BIPOC kids considering themselves to be? So these are some great things, some aha moments that I had as I was working with my book club. And then reflection. So what can educators do to manage racism? I saw a great book. I picked it up and I saw that in the book it says, the trouble is the familiar cycle of educators in schools adopting simplistic, ineffective strategies and approaches for attending to diversity that pose no threat to inequity. So instead of us really getting down to the root of the problem, we'll just do a bullying workshop and the teachers will understand what to do if someone's being bullied. But why is that person being bullied? So we need to go further and look at some solutions, some true solutions. And a solution could be that educators must be versed and trained in applying equity literacy to effectively be a threat to the existence of bias and inequity in our spheres of influence. So what is equity literacy? So equity literacy prepares us not to fix the cultures or mindsets of this or that group of students, not merely to appreciate diversity, but to root bias and inequity out of our classrooms, schools, and communities. And we're able to do this because we will be trained using the equity literacy framework. So this will allow us to recognize even the subtlest biases and inequities. We will be able to respond to these biases and inequities in the immediate term. And then we'll be able to redress them and we'll be able to create and sustain bias-free, equitable classrooms and schools. But in order for us to do this, we must make sure that we are willing to be uncomfortable. We are willing to have the conversations. We are willing to do the work. So this is a great book. It's called Case Studies on Diversity and Social Justice Education that will allow you to understand the equity framework. And it is a great book that we can present to our administrators and we can present to our co-workers and say, okay, let's talk about how we can become a anti-racist school and that we can make sure that we are identifying biases or inequities. And as you're going through the different case studies, it'll allow you to look at real world situations and to be able to go through the steps. So step 1, identify the biases or inequities. Step 2, take stock of various perspectives. Step 3, consider possible challenges and opportunities. 4, imagine equitable and just outcomes. And 5, brainstorm immediate-term solutions. And 6, brainstorm long-term solutions. And 7, craft a plan. So this is not just going to be a lot of talking that we'll do, but we will actually have a plan that we will put in action. But in order for us to be able to manage racism and to be an anti-racist educational system, we have to have the hard conversations, and we have to be willing to put in the work and to be able to support each other and to be able to acknowledge our roles and responsibilities in becoming an anti-racist educational system. And here are my references, and I hope that you guys get a chance to check out that book. It's a very good book, so make sure you get a chance to read and to share. Case studies on diversity and social justice education. And also make sure that you share one of the books that we read if you can, and if it's on the reading level for your students or the maturity level for your students. One of the books that we got a chance to read this summer. And thank you guys for everything.